Today we're going to change the front brake pads and rotors on a 2010 Ford Escape Hybrid. First thing you want to do is disconnect the negative battery cable on the battery. That's a 8mm nut there, just loosen that. You might have to spread these apart with a screwdriver to loosen it up a little bit and then just pull it off. Make sure this isn't touching the post and then you'll be good to go. Okay, so if you don't have an impact, you're going to want to loosen the lug nuts before you jack the car up. Without further ado, let's take the lug nuts off. First time I've used this impact, so let's see if it'll work. Oh. Guess not. Oh yeah, put it on 3, it does it. No problem. Cool. Now if you don't have an impact, you're going to be using a lug wrench or a socket. Either way, this takes a few minutes longer that way. So you pull the wheel off. Hope I got it jacked up enough. Yeah, just barely. Probably have to jack it up more when I go to put it back on. All right, well, I have read that on the hybrid, you got to pull the axle nut off. I was hoping that wasn't true. I don't know about the earlier years, but I read someplace that you got to take the axle nut off in order to get the rotor off. It's not true. They're separate, just like regular cars. And then I read someplace else on the earlier models, and I think this is true, that they had a complex hydraulic system for the brakes, and you had to disable it because if you didn't, the brakes would actuate as you're doing the job. So if you don't have a 2010, you better disable that. I think you can probably just disconnect the battery, but I'm not positive about that because you've got those high voltage batteries in the back and maybe they power it. I don't know. Luckily, I didn't have to find out. Anyway, so I've already got the wheel off. If you don't know how to get the wheel off, then you probably shouldn't be doing your own brakes. I put the jack stands right here. Let's see if I can get a view of the top of it, what it's sitting on. So, you know, always jack it up. Always use jack stands. Safety first. You don't want to put your head under there and have the car crashing down on top of you. That's no good. Okay, so got the wheel off. This is the rotor. For you guys that haven't done this before, obviously you took the lug nuts off. Now you got to take the caliper off. So in the back of the caliper, you can see where I've got this Allen wrench in here. There's a dust cap that goes right on top of here. Yours might be gone. If they're not gone, then you just pull them out. I'll show you what one looks like. So they look like this. They just pull out. You can use your fingernail, thumb, whatever. If you can't get it out, then just pry underneath the top with a screwdriver. It should pop right out. You really don't want to use an Allen wrench if you don't have to. My tools are at my other house, so I'm doing it with what I've got. This is I think it's a 7mm. I read that, yeah, that's a 7mm. Okay, I read that it was, I don't know, an 8 or a 9. It's not an 8 or a 9 on a 2010. It's a 7. So you can get this, put this on the Allen head screw, hex head, whatever you want to call it, and you keep turning it until it stops. Well, it doesn't stop, but it stops coming out because if you look, let's see if I can get a good view of it. This is the other end of that bolt right here, and it threads in to the caliper bracket. But once the threads come out of the caliper bracket, it's held into this piece here. It's rubber, and it wants to grip that bolt, so it doesn't want to come out. Sometimes you can just keep twisting them, they'll come out. Other times you got to get something and pry them out. So I'm going to pry this one out. It doesn't take much force. They're just stuck in there. So I'm just going to give it a little push, and once you get it going, you can push it the rest of the way out. Okay, so that is a caliper slide bolt, is what I call it. I'm not sure if that's what they're supposed to be called. So what I do with these, they're usually dirty. This one's not too bad, but
you know, you want to clean off everything because your caliper is going to slide on this. So you want to clean it up really good. I use acetone and a paper towel, and then any gunk that's left over, I've used like, you know, super fine sandpaper, like, I don't know, 400 grit, 600 grit, something like that. This time I used a little wire brush on the end of my drill, and it worked great. You just get the gunk off of it, and then you're going to put some caliper grease on it, just a thin coat on the whole thing. But we'll get to that when we go to put it back together. So there's that one. There's another one of these on the bottom. I'll show you that if I can. It is, where are you? It's down here. Yeah, there it is. So they're going to be probably too tight, so put your hex wrench, Allen wrench in that way, and then I usually get a boxed end wrench and put some leverage on it, and then break it loose. Once you break it loose, you got to turn the wrench around and use it this way, as it's faster. So with this one, maybe I can get it out without having to pry it with a screwdriver. Usually if you push it to one side and kind of pull as you're going, it'll come out without having to pry it. If you have to pry it, it's no big deal. Yeah, this one's coming out. There you go. Alright, so that's the other one. Stick it down here with its brother. So now you can pull the caliper off. Sometimes they just come off by hand. Not this one. Okay, I'm going to stop this here because I'm going to get a piece of wire so I can tie this up. I'll show you. I'll be right back. Well, I lied. Before you can take the caliper off, I forgot about this little spring clip. I don't know how you're supposed to take these things off. I just fiddle with them until they come off. Basically, there's hooks on the end of these that go down into a hole down this way, and this one too, this side too, that goes into a little hole, and they're real springy, spring clips, what I call them. I don't know if that's what they're really called, but anyway, you got to figure out how to get it out of there. So they go flying out. There you go. That's how you do it. I hope I had the video on that when I got it off. Anyway, so once you get that spring clip off, then the caliper's ready to come off. So if it's not coming off by hand, this one probably would, but I'm going to show you what I usually do. You can pull the caliper to you this way a little bit, and sometimes you could compress it, or you can stick a screwdriver in between the pad and the edge of the caliper and pull it that way a little bit. That'll compress it. When I say compress it, I mean there's a piston in here that's got hydraulic fluid behind it. There's no pressure on it right now because your foot's not on the brake. So now that I've pulled it this direction a little bit, that compresses that piston a little bit, and this thing should just come right off. Easier said than done with one hand. There we go. Okay, now, don't let this thing hang. Don't let the caliper hang on the hose. What you want to do is you want to tie it up. And I don't think I can tie a knot with one hand. I guess I could try. Anyway, there's usually something up here you can tie it to. It doesn't really matter what. And this car's got a little hole in the... Flipped around and had the camera facing me there for a second. So, you know, just tie a half hitch. That'd probably be fine. I like to use wire. You can use zip ties. You can maybe even use a bungee cord. I don't know. But just tie it up because you don't want the weight of the caliper hanging on the hose. The hoses are pretty tough, but you break a hose, you're going to be hating life because chances are you're doing this when the dealership's closed. I don't know if you can get one at the parts store. Luckily for me, I've never broken one, so I'm gonna shut this off right now. I'm gonna tie a knot, and then I'll come back and show you what I did. Okay, so there you go. I just tied it up out of the way. It's just hanging there. So now you gotta, if you're changing your rotors, if you're not changing your rotors, you just put the new pads in, and I'll show you that towards the end. But I am changing the rotors, and
like I said earlier, somebody said, and maybe it's true on the earlier ones, I don't know. I've never, well, I take that back. I did have a car that you had to take the axle nut off in order to get the rotors out. It was an old Honda Accord, I think, that early one. Anyway, somebody reported that you have to do that on this car, but you don't. And I'll show you that in a minute. But before that, here's the brake pad on the outside, and it just comes right off once you get that caliper off. There's still a lot of brake pad material on here, so you can see the thing my thumb's touching, that's metal. And then this part here, I know most of you guys already know this, but some of you don't. This is the brake pad material, and you can see it's really thick. That's probably, it's over an 1/8 inch thick. It's probably 3/16, but that's a lot. That's a lot left on there. But on the other side, it was metal to metal, and there were no wear indicators on these, so I damaged the rotor. But this came from Idaho, this car, so it's got some rust, quite a bit of rust. I'm in California. I'm not used to seeing rust on cars, but I mean, it's not horrible. You guys on the East Coast are probably laughing at me saying that's not rust. Anyway, so to get these brackets off, you got some I think they're 18 millimeter bolt heads on these. There's two of them. There's one here, and there's one down here. There's two of them. So you got those two slide pins for the caliper, and then you got two bolts for the caliper bracket. So let me grab an impact, and I'll take those off real quick. Okay. I know, it's a Ryobi, but I like it. It works really good, and it wasn't too expensive. So just hit it. Whoop, it's hard to do watching the camera instead of the impact. There we go. So there's one. Doesn't fit up here too good. At least it didn't on the other side. It's off. Okay, but anyway, try not to drop it. It's probably not good for it. It's a big heavy piece of steel, so it probably didn't hurt it, but it's only two bolts holding it on. So once you get those off, now you can just take the caliper off, and if you're real lucky and there's no rust on yours, it should just come right off. Mine doesn't come right off, so I need a hammer. Let me grab a hammer. Okay, getting these off can be a real pain in the butt. So I've seen some guys, they say hit it between the studs. That doesn't do crap. So what I do, if that doesn't work, just get yourself a couple of bolts. I'll tell you, I did brakes for years without knowing this trick, and once I learned this, it's one of those eureka moments, you know. So you put the bolt through the hole that held the caliper bracket. You want one on the top, one on the bottom. If you only got one, you could probably get by with just one, but you do that, and then I need two hands to do this, but you put the where is it? Then you put the nut on, all right? And then once I get the nut on, I'll show it to you. Okay, so that's how you start. Just put a nut on the back side, and what's going to happen is you're going to tighten the nut onto the bolt, and it's going to force the bolt. I need to point towards the rotor, because there's the rotor right there. So the bolt is going to push on the rotor. You can put a bunch of pressure on it, especially with two bolts. And you tighten those and get them real good and snug, and that alone might take it off. If it doesn't, then keep them tight and then whack on it again with the hammer like I did in the first place. So I don't think I can. Well, I'm gonna have to put the camera down. So as you tighten the bolts, like I said before, it forces the bolt in that direction, pushes against the rotor, and pushes it off the studs. If that doesn't work right away, you can tighten the nuts up like before, both of them, so they're really pushing on here, and then hit the rotor between the lug bolts,
or studs, and hopefully that'll break it loose. If it doesn't, loosen these bolts up again and then rotate the rotor 180 degrees and then tighten them again so that you're not pushing on this side anymore, you're pushing on that side, but that side's over here now, if that makes sense. Anyway, mine's off, so I'm going to take it off. I'll take those bolts out. I'll get the new one, the new rotor, and I'll clean it up, show you how I do that, and we'll take it from there. So once you get the rotor off, you can see what was holding it. This is all rusty. This is where it, this was the seat for this, and you can see how friggin' rusty that is. And even on the back, it was, they're rusted together. Once you break that bond loose, the thing comes right off. Now, if you're a good guy and conscientious, you're going to clean all that rust off of there for the next guy. Plus, it's going to make it a little easier to put back together. So let me grab my drill, a couple wire brushes, and I'll just show you how I do that real quick. Okay, I just have a little wire wheel on my drill. I've done it lots of different ways. Just a wire brush, a bigger wire wheel, wire wheel on a grinder. There's a million ways to do it. I like this little one. In fact, today's the first day I've used it because you can get almost all of it without having to use a regular wire brush. So I just get in there and clean it up. So, I mean, that was probably 2 minutes worth of cleaning with that little wire wheel. It's not done yet. I mean, you could probably put it back together like that, but I'm going to take just a small wire brush and go over it by hand. So, I got a wire brush. It's one of these Harbor Freight jobs. It's wire brush on one side, looks like brass, and probably just nylon bristles or something on the other side. That's not ideal. You want one that's just wire brush on one side. All my tools are at my other house, so like I said before, I'm using what I got. So just stuff comes off fairly easy. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just get it better than it was. The goal here is to keep it from sticking the next time, and chances are you're not going to be the next guy doing it anyway, unless you're going to keep it for 100,000 miles after you do the job. And you might. I saw a video the other day. That Ford guy, Maki Udo, or whatever his name is. I love his videos, by the way. He's awesome. But he had one, I think it had like 320,000 miles on it. He said, these things last. So I've got about 110, I think, on this one, maybe 120. And 2010, and it's still running good. So, that's the goal. At least that's my goal. It's never going to be perfect, but that's pretty good. Okay, I'm going to put the new rotor on, but then I have to clean it. It's got, sometimes they put grease on them, which is real booger to get off, but these have just like they're in bags, and they've got a light coating of oil. So I just take acetone and wipe them down with a clean paper towel, both sides. I'll show you how to do that. So like I said, it comes in a box, or they came in separate boxes, and then they're wrapped in like a sealed plastic bag. So you don't need to see the unboxing. I'm going to take it out of the bag, and I'm going to stick it temporarily on the car, and then use the acetone to clean it up. Yeah, I know this says paint thinner, but it's acetone. And the funny thing is, that's what came in this can from Home Depot. I guess paint thinner is anything that'll thin paint, and it was acetone. I mean, it smelled exactly like acetone, so I'm sure that's what it is. Anyway, so get yourself a clean paper towel and some acetone, and then you're gonna just clean this whole surface really, really good. Okay, and then you're gonna just take the rotor off, flip it around, stick it back on, just temporarily while you clean it. It's a great place to temporarily put it. Holds it well. And once you're done with that, you start putting it back together. That's what I meant about putting it on backwards or turning it around. It's just temporary. It's all cleaned off now. I'm going to flip it around and start putting it back together. The thing you're going to do is put that rotor support back on. I like to take a couple of the lug bolts and tighten the rotor down so it's not flopping around. Just hand tight, just to hold it in place. Obviously, you got to take them back off before you can put the wheels on, but it's optional. I just find it makes it a little easier. Something like that, just hold it in place. Now it's time to put that bracket back on. So, were you paying close attention? Do you know which way the bracket goes back on? Well, obviously, the big threaded holes are what the bolts go into. That's got to go in the back, so it either goes this way or it goes this way. I'm thinking it goes this way, but if not, it only goes one way. So let's take a look. Yeah, so you line that up. There's where the bolt goes through right there. I can't hold it and show you at the same time. So I'm going to set the camera down. I'll put the 2 bolts in. Sometimes they're kind of hard to get in. Oh, one more thing. I usually put a little anti-seize on them. I don't think it matters what kind you use. I got this silver stuff because I did some exhaust manifolds recently, so the nickel stuff. You can use the copper stuff too. I'm sure it doesn't make any difference. But just a little bit, and I just take the bolts and where's the other bolt? Try to stay organized, you know. All right, now I got to shut the camera off so I can find the damn bolt. Okay, I found it. So now I just take the anti-seize. You can see most of the bolt is going to stay in the bracket, so you really don't need to put anti-seize on that part. So I just run a little bead right down the threads. Don't need much, just like that. That's all you need. Okay, and then when you screw them in, just screwing them in is gonna smear that anti-seize around. Hold on, can't put those. So the bolts are in, but they're not tight. Got the anti-seize on them. Now, to do this right, you're gonna want to look up the torque value and use a torque wrench. I'm not going to use a torque wrench. I usually do, but this is my car. I'm going to risk my life and hope that I get them just right. You know, you don't want to tighten them too much. You don't stress them. You don't want to leave them loose. But you know, I've been doing this for, I don't know, 45, 50 years, easy, maybe longer. So you know, I got a pretty good idea how tight they're supposed to be. But I'm just too lazy to dig out the torque wrench and go find out the specs. So you should probably do that if you don't feel confident. And it's, you know, it's really easy to torque them, so you do that. Okay, now on the caliper's got a piston. That's where the fluid comes in, brake fluid, of course. Goes into that little housing right there, and inside that housing there's a cylindrical shaped like cup. It's closed off on the bottom, it's hollow on the top. I'm going to leave that brake pad in there for now. I'm going to show you how I collapse them. There's several ways to do it. Well, I don't know about several, but there's more than one for sure. You can use a great big pair of channel locks if you got them. I got them. They're not here. They're at the other house. I got a C-clamp, so that's what I'm going to use. And I leave the brake pad in there because it makes it easier. It's easier. You don't have to, if you don't have the brake pad on top of there, then the threaded part of the C-clamp is going to go down inside that cup, like it goes down inside here. It goes down here with this off. This is hollow, and what you want to do is you want to push this all the way down. This little dust cover here is going to collapse, and you'll see. Let me get the C-clamp on there and I'll show you how I set it up. Okay, so you got to find a flat spot on your caliper for one end of the C-clamp, and then you got the threaded part. We'll go around the other side and see what that's hooked up to. It's just pressing on that brake pad. Try to get it, you know, close as you can to the center, and then as you push it, let me see if I can, I can't turn the light on with this magnification. Anyway, when you tighten it, you'll see it start to collapse. It's going down, but it's easier with two hands. One hand to hold the caliper, one hand to turn the C-clamp, but you can do it with one hand. You see it pushing down, and once it's all the way down, it just stops. You'll feel it stop. There's a little bit of resistance as you first start, but once you get to the end, I mean, that's it. You know it's not going any further, so just stop. Almost there. I think that's it. It gets slipped off, but I think that's it. So loosen it up a little bit. If you're lucky enough, you can take it off without undoing it all the way. So now you can take that old pad out of there. On this car, there's like clips on the back side of this this inboard brake pad, so it snaps off. I'll show you. See the clips? So those clips go down into that hole, and that hole is like the piston for your caliper. I don't know if you could kind of see down inside, I guess. I wish I had light, it'd be better, but I don't. So anyway, now I'm going to grab the new brake pads and let's show you how they go in. So over the years, they've come out with all kinds of different things to keep your brakes from squeaking and to lubricate the caliper slide pin. This set of brakes came with some stuff, and it looks like you can apply this to the back of the brake pads and to lubricate the slide pin. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to use that instead of what I normally use, that stuff, which is okay, you know, but it's, I don't know, I'm going to use this. It came with it. I use this stuff on the other side, so I guess we'll do a comparison. You know, 10 years from now, we'll see which one worked best. All right, so I'm going to open this up, and I'm going to show you where I put it on the brakes. Okay, I've seen a lot of guys, including myself, put that stuff, the lubricant, on the back of the pads themselves. But more recently, I've just been putting it on the caliper. I mean, that's where it's going to rub on the brake pad. So that side, and then the other fixed side, it's like inside here, right around in here. Okay, so it does the same thing. It's putting it on the pad, but I think it's a little cleaner because it's only going where it's needed. So that's what I do. And then the next thing you want to do is clean up the slide pins. As I told you earlier, slide pins. There they are. Slide pins, that's what I call them, caliper slide pins. So I'm going to clean these up. I'm going to clean them off with acetone with a clean paper towel, and then I'm going to go over them with the wire wheel real quick to get off any gunk. And like I said, you could use super fine sandpaper if you don't have a wire wheel, and then just put a thin film of that same grease onto these, and we'll take it from there. Okay, this is what the slide pins look like after I clean them off with acetone. You can still see there's a little gunk next to the threaded ends. You don't have to worry about the threads so much. I mean, they should be clean, but they're not sliding on anything. It's the unthreaded part that everything slides on. So that's got to be smooth, and it's got to be lubed up a little bit, because if it's not, your calipers can stick. And if they stick, there's nothing pulling the brake pads away from your brake after you take your foot off the brake. So if they don't slide easily, they'll just stay right up against your rotor, and that's how you can wear your brakes out, and you can cause your rotors to overheat and eventually warp. Yeah, don't ask me how I know. I figured that one out about 20 years ago. Okay, now they're clean, so now I'm going to put the grease on. Now with these, I usually just put a light film on it, smear it all over, and then install the caliper. This probably goes without saying, but I'm sure people have made this mistake before. Whenever you're putting grease on anything on your brakes, you don't want to put a lot on, and you definitely don't want to get any grease on your brake pads. Brake pad, no grease on here, right? Because you don't want that lubricated up. So now I've got to put the inside pad into the caliper. You might be thinking, well, your hands are all oily. I keep wiping them off, and use clean paper towels and acetone. I keep cleaning these gloves off too, so I make sure I don't get any grease on these pads. That's a big no-no. Okay, so this is probably one of the most difficult parts, just getting this stupid thing into that piston. Okay, so that's in. That one's in. Got a little bit of oil on there, but tiny bit's not going to matter. You can clean it off with brake cleaner or acetone if it bothers you. So I probably will, because this is bothering me. So at this point, you're going to untie the caliper, and I can't do that with one hand. So, oh, I'm zoomed in too far. I'm going to untie the caliper, and I'm going to put it back in position with that one brake pad in there. You know, different cars are going to be different, so this is really just specifically for a 2000 Ford Escape. If you got a 2010, I mean, so if you got a different year or different car, find a video on that particular vehicle. This probably applies to the 2011, 2012, but I'm not positive. All right, so I'm going to bring the caliper. I'm going to take it off of the wire, and I'll try to show you me putting it on so you get an idea. Before you put the caliper on, you want to put the front brake pad in, the outside, outboard, outside, whatever you want to call it. Of course, once you get it in, then it won't come out again, but it should. So let me just show you. Sometimes you want to put one side in before the other. Doesn't really matter. They go in those little grooves in this car. And it's like that, and it just sits there for now. The caliper is going to hold it in place. So once that's in there, and you've got your piston pushed back, you've got your new pad mounted on the inside of the caliper. Oh, I'm pushing it out here. Okay, that's definitely hard to do with one hand. So it just fits down like that, and that's basically in. Now you got to put your slide bolts back in. Remember those over there. So slide bolts, they go back into this rubber thing here, and you just push them in. The hardest part about this is they don't want to start in the holes. Sometimes you get lucky, they just go right in. Most of the time, you got to kind of wiggle this a little bit while you're pushing on the bolt, and you'll feel it go in just a little bit. And you can even put your wrench on there. In fact, I'm going to do that. Put my hex wrench on here, and see if it'll get started with one hand. No, see, it won't. So I'm going to have to wiggle it. I'm going to need two hands to get that bolt started. It's not a big deal, but once you get it started, then when you put the other bolt in down below, you might want to take this caliper, if the bottom one doesn't start, and rotate it back and forth. I'm exaggerating it, but you rotate the whole caliper just a hair, really, until you get that bottom bolt to start, and then tighten them both up. I'll show you. So once you get the top bolt in, right here, you can't see it anymore because it's gone in so far you can't see it beyond that rubber end piece. Don't tighten it all the way, but just hand tight. That way, when you go to do the bottom one, the hole's going to be pretty much lined up. If it doesn't go in, then like I said before, we'll try it. Maybe it'll go in right away. I think I got lucky. Yeah, you can see it going in. Sometimes you get lucky like that, but if not, rotate the caliper just 32nd of an inch one way or the other, and it'll go in. Once you get the top one done, the bottom one's usually a lot easier. So give it a good snug. I'm going to go back with a cheater, box end wrench, get some leverage on these Allen wrenches, on this Allen wrench, like this. And just give it a little extra snug. Again, to do it right, you want to torque it. I don't have the specs. I'm not going to look them up. I don't want to break it, right? So tight, but not ridiculously tight. So after that, if you've got those little dust covers, I seem to be missing one. Oh, there it is. If you got the dust covers, now where are we here? There we go. Put those back on. The bottom one. Where are you? There we go. Okay, so Now we've got to put that spring clip in, and honestly, I don't know the right way to do it. I'm going to get it done, but I'm not going to tell you how to do it because I really don't know. I don't think I've ever watched a video on how to do it. I don't have the patience to look it up because I figure I'll get it done quicker just fiddling with it and doing it. Basically, this thing, it goes like this. You know, this part here goes under that caliper bracket, and then this part goes in the hole and snaps in, and then the other piece has to do the same thing. There's got to be a correct way to do it. I'll be honest with you guys, I don't know what it is. So maybe you just put it like this and then press it this way. I don't know. I'm going to put it on. I'll show you what it's done, and you're going to have to use your own ingenuity to figure it out. Once I get it on there, I'll try to come back and tell you how I did it. Okay, here we go. Okay, here's what I did. I got my C-clamp. I put the two center things in to the holes, and the bottom's easy. You put the bottom clip on first, and then put the two center legs into the holes, and then the top part of this clip is going to be sitting up here. So take a screwdriver, the C-clamp's going to hold it in place. I tried to hold it with my hand, I couldn't do it. So then I just took a screwdriver, stuck it back here, went over the rotor and just pried it, and then forced it down on the other side of that caliper bracket, and that worked pretty good. So I'm going to take the C-clamp off. Actually, I can see it's not in the hole, so I'm going to try to force it down in there. Yeah, there we go. See, yeah, you want to get that the hook end of that clip down into the hole. This hole goes in, and then I believe it goes down that way, so you want the hook to go into that hole. You'll see when you take it off. Where's the old one? I could show you on that. Yeah. Okay, so basically I got this end and this end where they belong, and then I got this one into the hole, and then this end was on top of where it was supposed to go instead of, well, it was supposed to be below, but I had it on top of the caliper bracket. I took the C-clamp in this area and held it in place so these parts wouldn't pop out. I took the screwdriver, forced this thing out around the bracket, and then it snapped back underneath. And then, before I take the C-clamp off, I got this upside down, I made sure to push this hook, if you can see it, into the hole. So you have to push down this way into the hole. So hopefully that's clear as mud. That's one of the toughest parts of this silly job. But I think that's about it. So I'm going to take the C-clamp off. I'll take these lug nuts off that was holding the rotor in place. Put the wheel back on, and then go push on the brakes and see if it works. I'm sure it will. Okay, be right back. Well, and there you have it. It's back on. Lug nuts are on. I'm going to take it off the jack stands and torque those lug nuts. I don't know why I'm torquing those and not anything else, but that's what I'm going to do. And then, just so you know, when you go to press on the pedal, make sure it's in park, because your brakes are not going to work until you pump them several times. You're going to press that pedal, you're going to freak out because the pedal is going to go all the way to the floor. But don't worry about it. It's going to, after you pump it up, they're going to be fine. Make sure you don't ever open up the hydraulic system unless you really know what you're doing. I've heard that on the hybrids, you can only get the hydraulic systems bled at the dealer. I don't know if that's true on this one. Like I said earlier, the early models had a really sophisticated, high-tech, complex hydraulic system. These, I think they've just got like an air compressor or a vacuum, probably a vacuum pump, not an air compressor. Got a vacuum pump, so they always have a vacuum. So you probably could bleed these, but don't take my word for it. I could be really wrong. So I just didn't take any chances. I made sure I didn't take didn't open up the bleeder for the caliper or anything like that. I haven't looked at the fluid in the brake fluid reservoir, so that's one thing you want to be mindful of. If that's ever been filled back up after you've maybe your brakes got really worn and your light came on your dash and told you to add some fluid, so you did. When you go to do your brakes and you push your pistons back in, all that fluid's got to go somewhere. So it'll go back up into your brake fluid reservoir, and you can overfill it. And let's see if I don't think I did, but because I didn't hear anything splashing. And I think that's brake fluid. Yeah, that's brake fluid in this vehicle. So yeah, it's definitely full. It's right at the peak. I don't know if you can see it in there, but. So that's fine. It's all good. And I'm going to go press on the brakes and see if they work. If they do, I'll report back. Oh, another thing you want to do when you're working on a car, and I kind of tried to do it this time, but I didn't do a very good job of it. Get yourself like a plastic trash bag. And once you get the wheel jacked up, put the trash bag under the wheel, because you're going to get a bunch of brake dust crap all over the place. On the other side, I put the wheel on before I even swept it up. At least I swept this side up. I had a bag on the ground under this one to catch all that crap, but it's windy today, so the bag kept blowing, stuff is going all over the place. But it's going to do a number on your driveway. And like I said, on the other side of the car, I put the wheel on without sweeping it up, so now I'm going to go jack it up because the wheel hasn't touched the ground yet. I'm going to jack it up higher so I can get a broom underneath there, because you really don't want to drive on that stuff. And it's bad enough. You can see the driveway's stained a little bit now. It's bad enough to have this stuff just sitting on your driveway, but once the tire pushes into it, that stuff's never going to come up. You're going to have just a big mess. So anyway, something to think about. If anything goes wrong, I'll let you know. Otherwise, I think we're finished. Ask questions and I'll answer as well as I can. Thanks. Bye. Some final thoughts. After you've finished putting the brakes on and put the wheels back on, you're going to have to jump inside the car and you're going to have to push the brake pedal down several times. That's because you've taken you've compressed the pistons in the calipers, and now you got to push them back out. So the brake fluid's going to do that. When you press on the brake pedal, you're pushing the fluid back in there, and that pressurizes again. On this car, I did have a little glitch, and I mentioned that in the description of the video. Once I finished, I pumped the brakes up and took it for a little test drive. But the check brake system light was on, and then the stability light was also on. I'm like, uh-oh, great. It's a hybrid, something tricky that I didn't know about's going on. So I drove it around a little bit. I even shut the engine off a couple of times while I was still driving it, and then started it before it stopped. Didn't make any difference. So I drove it around for about 5 minutes. I pulled it back in the driveway here, shut the engine off, and then started it right back up. Both lights were off. Oh, and then I forgot to mention, when I took it for that first test drive, the brakes worked, but they were like a little mushy, which is bizarre. But anyway, when I shut the engine off, turned it back on, brakes weren't mushy anymore, the lights were both off, and I don't know if I got lucky or if that's just the way it is. So, try this job at your own risk. I think it'll probably work out for you, but don't come looking for me if it doesn't. All right, well, good luck to you.